I'm delighted to be able to moderate the best panel of the day, which is a panel of our CIO Award finalists. Really amazing leaders. You've heard their stories already in some panels, but you'll get to hear more about what they're doing on leadership now. You know, this evolution of AI, it's really changing the opportunities, but also the challenges in what we're facing in organizations. And what you've heard today, you heard about cybersecurity issues. You heard Amar saying this, you need a different kind of leader. You hear this over and over again. It's a different world. And what's great about these leaders here is they are already they're already making that different world happen. You need to be business leaders who just happen to be leading the tech function. You need to help shape strategy, not just execute it. You need a real vision for what's possible, but at the same time have the reality on what you can really do and when to do it. And you need to do that all with the human skills, the storytelling, the leadership skills to make the change happen, even though you don't necessarily own the parts of the organization that you're changing. So once again, I'm really delighted to have this group here. Next to me is Dimitris Bountolos, who's the CIO and Innovation Officer for Ferrovial. Monica Caldas, who's the EVP and Global Chief Information Officer for Liberty Mutual, and Bill Pappas, EVP Global Tech and Operations for MetLife. So what I thought I'd do is just, first of all, just go down the line and just ask of you, why do you think you're a finalist here? If you could give the elevator pitch on what are you most proud of that you've been doing? Let's start with you, Dimitris.
I think it's always subjective, but to maintain the motion of the inertia, in my case of large organization, small entrepreneurial endeavor, and to bring back in the days, the consultancy flavor into pragmatic recommendation has been, in my career, like a common denominator. Adapt those three dimensions to the context in such a volatile dynamic and try to decode the opportunities generating value. For me, it's an exciting journey, and do it at a scale. It's something that I believe is part of the reason I'm here, just to share with you the lessons and to put in common with the community.
Well, thank you. Monica, how about you?
Well, I would maybe +1. I think we all have a common thread in our approach and how we show up for our organizations. And I would say what I would add is in my career, I've always been looking for challenges and solving problems. And I spent 18 years at GE with that orientation, which is why I came to insurance, because when I learned about the opportunity, it was a transformation opportunity. And I looked at my husband and I was like, these are the people that send us decks of paper with policy in 8-point font. I think technology can help, and I'd like a chance at doing that. So I have been delighted to find that, in fact, Liberty Mutual is incredibly innovative and has partnered with universities and organizations for years and years, from the elevator red button. That was a Liberty Mutual invention in partnership with universities, the seatbelt in the car, there's a Boston elbow. So there's an incredibly innovative company, and I'm thrilled that I get to bring the energy of transformation to an environment that actually welcomes it. So what I've been doing is driving global transformation. What does that mean? That's a lot of change. It's a lot of, we've always done it this way, but maybe we can think about a different way of doing it. And we've done that through contact center modernization, where we put in a fully cloud-enabled and therefore better to serve customers. We put in a global digital ecosystem that brought together 3 different countries, 3 different processes that we had to unite into one with 3 different regulating bodies. So those are just some examples, but I would maybe say the theme is transformation, and therefore I am delighted to be a CIO at this moment in time. And I would imagine that you guys share that too, right, Bill?
No, absolutely. Is that on?
Yes.
Oh, good. I always need help, I guess. So I think you said there's 3 things that make me excited, and a lot of this kind of go across all of us and a lot of other CIOs that they manage complex or in big organizations. Number 1 is just I'm very excited in terms of how do you manage the conversion of change. If you look at what happened the last 5 years, we are talking about from geopolitical to proliferation of AI to really different regulatory environment, especially if we're going across 40 different countries, which is a footprint, to changing the dynamic of the workforce. And at the same time, you look at more pressure from a cybersecurity perspective, and it's all coming at the same time. And the reality is you don't have the luxury on doing one versus the other. I grew up in an industry, but that we've never seen that conversion of change at a pace that people need to be able to adapt. The second thing I think my team is really good at is how do we create what I call new execution playbooks. We used to be hired because of what we have done before. But look at, again, the last 5 years. Pandemic does not have a playbook. Responsible use of AI does not have a playbook. Cybersecurity, the playbook is brand new. So how do you develop new ways of executing at the same time as you manage a conversion of change at a pace that you have never done before? And the last thing that you have to do is you need to flawlessly execute, but you also need to execute at scale to be able to move the bottom line. Because at the end of the day, regardless if we're sitting on technology, operations, whatever function we are, the kind of North Star is the strategy, and we need to being able to take care of our customers, but also we need to take care of our shareholders. So if I look at all those three pieces, I think this is the exciting piece, and being able to do it in a company that has been around for 157 years and modernize that company and truly modernize that company, not only plug in new tools, but really modernize and simplify the company to be able to withstand the next 150 years. It's an exciting proposition.
Well, thank you. Really exciting stories here. And then this idea of, not only just thinking about where's the technology fit, but how do we reimagine the business? How do we do that at scale? How do we connect across our regions in ways we never could? These commonalities, they're really hard, and you've managed to do those. Another thing that's really hard is, at least from what I'm hearing, is AI is not nearly as easy as we thought it was. In fact, I keep hearing things like that low-hanging fruit, it's really not so low. Or, it's great on the lab, it's great on the bench, but it's hard to take it to scale. So now we're in this world, it's the year of agentic AI. So, Dimitris, I want to ask you, where's agentic AI going to happen in organizations?
So I think it was not the topic, it was not the headline last year, but this year, any conversation, any pulse is putting agentic AI in the middle of the dilemma. No? We believe in this is something that is going to redefine the way teams, human beings, organizations are interacting with each other. We believe yes. Do we have an opportunity where to augment and gain scale is going to be accelerated? We believe yes, that's going to be the case. But we have also, as a reverse side of the coin, the threat of not being able to create a competitive advantage in that particular landscape. One example very close to us. So we have hundreds of data domain, knowledge domain, where potentially the creation of a proprietary inventory of agents could give us a long-term competitive advantage. Those particular agents are very difficult to be replicate across the business. We could potentially even convert those agents in a proprietary business unit, creating a marketplace and offering that to our supply chain, to our subcontractors, and even to other companies that require to increase their position in the ladder. But if we don't train those agents with the right information, we could augment our company with proxy of humans that are probably not behaving like toddlers, but they are behaving like teenagers. Brute force, a lot of rack information, but not the nuances and the semantic and the grammar and the particularities of our business that right now have not been transferred to any database. No? And we are very conscious about how serious we need to decode what makes us special after 72 years building the most iconic infrastructure all over the world. And if we are able to inoculate those particular type of small competitive advantage in the way we are going to bypass the reasoning through the augmented agents in the future. One of our crusades, and maybe it's quite romantic, is to introduce the Alejandría internal project, like the replacement of the library that was burnt. Any meaningful role in the company, we believe in the next 5 years or even less, is going to have a proxy. How to create the better proxy for that role, assuming that teams are going to interact with agents for other companies, our supply chain is going to have protocols in order to automate those tasks. This is something that right now has limited standards, vague orientation about how we're going to use the technology, and a lot of fear for many of those employees that are having the impression that could be replaced. But we need to take the opportunity and use this technology as a pivotal factor to scale our business and our models.
You know, if I could add one thing, everything you said I agree with. The one piece that maybe I would add to it is the point you made about maybe they're not toddlers, these agents, but you know, how do you manage them? We're actually thinking about it as these are digital employees. And so how do you now set in place the training, the risk management, access controls, everything that goes with what an employee would have? And so that's our concept, and we've since launched 2 digital employees. One is named Libby, the other one's named Sydney. They're all female names, that's okay. The point being, we're testing this because today it's 2, you know, next month how many, and so on, and how do you get on the ground floor with the fundamentals before you just set out on a strategy of just building agents? So how do you balance both the capabilities you need with the fundamentals is something that we're right now, to your point, there's no playbook, so we're creating it as we go, and that would be one piece of advice I would give. And if anyone's got it figured out, let me know after this. I could take some advice.
Yeah, just make sure you code them so they don't unionize and go on strike. So, you know, it's interesting. There's also this question, we've talked about the fear, right? And you've both talked about how this idea that one of your teammates may now be a computer, is that something we need to think about, or will this just be a natural evolution? People will get used to it.
I mean, I can add, I think you need to be intentional about it. So I call it the human plus. I mean, we're sitting here today and we are like, we have already 5 generations in today's workforce. And we're probably gonna be the last one that is gonna be only humans from a workforce perspective. So my point of view is the human plus piece, and how do you become intentionally, and not only to your point that Monica makes, make sure that the pieces that is gonna be the plus, it's appropriately integrated into your ecosystem, but how do you create the relationship? We never taught as leaders on how do you do that. So, and especially given the ability that they have to think and act similar like the humans, we need to start figuring out how do we appropriately collaborate, and what does collaboration really mean as we're moving forward? And how do you do it as you have 5 generations into the workforce? So I think that intentionality, it's gonna be very, very important, but I just don't think it's gonna happen naturally, because you have 5 generations. The new generations that are coming in, you already see them. I see my kids. They have a very different way of being able to integrate and collaborate with the tools that they have today. So there is going to be a point that this is going to be natural, but until you get there, there is an intentionality that you need to have to be able to make this productive and get the benefits out of that relationship.
Thanks. It's interesting, this idea of having to be really proactive to help people figure out how to collaborate. And also, I think our mindsets have to change. I've for 10 years now been going with this idea that human plus machine is better than either one. And there's some brand new research, a big meta-analysis out of MIT that says actually, in many cases, if the computer is better than the person, just don't involve the person in that at all. And so that's a whole different way of thinking I have to think about, and what does that mean for us collaborating in teams too. So if that's AI though, let me come back to you, Bill, to start. With all this talk about AI, what is not getting enough attention here beyond AI?
Yeah, and I think in AI, the piece that gets attention in AI for me are the tools. Everybody are enamored with the tools, and all of you are in technology, so you know how that gets. So there is a signing object, and I call it an opportunity of a lifetime. So there is a reason why there is so much excitement, and I'm as excited about this. And there is the leadership. So what is not getting a lot of attention on the tools people shying away from those tools needs to be plugged into an ecosystem that it needs to be simplified and contemporary enough to be able to take the value out of those new tools. It was an article in Wall Street that we are sitting, the top 100 Fortune companies, they're sitting at 1.5 trillion of legacy infrastructure. And the reality is those tools are very sophisticated at this point, but they don't work around your legacy yet. So a lot of companies, if they have not been regulated and they have been forced to flush out the legacy, there is a significant investment that companies and the board needs to be made to be able to get more contemporary. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to utilize all of this. And the second thing that is getting kind of attention, but not as much attention as it needs to be, it's data. Because you have legacy infrastructure, you have a lot of commingled and very siloed data that is definitely not democratized. It's not accessible at a volume that you need to be able to take advantage of this new technology. So those are the two areas that it's a hard ROI discussion with your board, but quite frankly, you need to have it in order to be able to take full advantage of the tools. The second thing that goes back to, I think we're not discussing at all, it's the leadership aspects. What does it take to be able to really lead? And for me, when I look at it from AI, there is three things that we keep focusing on. One is we need critical thinking. We need none of these machines yet, none of this excitement will be able to have the critical thinking. So think about how do we make sure our leaders, they're really honing in on the critical thinking. Second thing is around the collaboration, that the human plus concept. How do you are able to have a workforce with a human plus, and how does that, it's productive, but also helps you get the value out of this. And the third thing, I think it's the most exhausting thing that people feel right now, it's this creating a culture of learning, relearning, and quite frankly, the most difficult one is unlearning what make you very successful. So when I interview, I don't really interview, to be honest with you, around AI skill sets. I interview for critical thinking. I interview with the ability to be able to collaborate in that human plus, and I interview with people that they're comfortable enough to leave behind what made them successful. And I interview with somebody that not only get a number with a tool, but really think about that upstream and downstream implication and not skipping step, because that tells me that they kind create something that is sustainable longer term versus take advantage of those tools, but take advantage on a small percentage of what's possible because you haven't truly changed or modernized your company.
Anybody else want to add some things we should be thinking about that we aren't?
Fully endorse what Bill said. I will say for our particular case, we relied in more than 50,000 suppliers all over the world, different sizes, different contexts, different capabilities that are not equalized with our vision and our processes. And in this journey, talking about the AI, we need to be very sensible of how we can leverage our understanding, our tools, our capabilities in order to let them grow at the same time. Because when you are deploying your business model with such a level of dependency in the overall value chain, we are trying to run this race as fast as possible in a volatile environment with all those constraints that Bill was commenting, but in many occasions without being fully aware about the systemic part of the role we play across the overall ecosystem, and not just the startup. There are SMEs, there are all companies that have not been able to understand and decode how to introduce in their own processes what we are talking about. And their lack of efficiency or the limited improvement because they are not able to decode how to introduce this type of technology that is not deterministic, requires experimentation, the technology is not so much, I will say, standardized, is creating a gap from the leaders and from those that are trying to maximize the opportunity. The other is something that worries us a lot at the level of the executive committee and with our leaders across the region is how to repurpose the role of the leader, no matter it's a functional role or a technical role, no? The typical why, what, how. So to anticipate that in the how we are not gonna bring the experience that probably made us what we are. And we are going to have to repurpose many of our skills and competencies in order to go deeper in how to understand the reasoning of what we are doing, because the impact in 4 or 5 years could be very difficult to be unlock or deconstruct. It's something that is going to change the way we are hiring at all levels, no? And the third one, that I don't know if you agree with me, is that vision, probably very short-term oriented, of how productive could be a senior employee at all levels with the capability to be augmented with the new tools. That is amazing. We are gaining incredible productivity, in particular in coding, but we are missing the gap of how are we going to maintain a healthy ladder of connection between all the generation. If I'm intentionally not hiring probably so many new employees with limited experience because are less productive even with the use of the tool, I want to create a different shape that in the medium term is not going to be able to be sustained. Are we going to create that transmission of understanding and knowledge in a healthy way? That's something that right now worries us a lot, because we are creating a fracture in the generational, I will say, connection of many of our employees within the organization.
So am I hearing you right that if we don't hire people to do the grunt work, they don't then have the skills when they're leaders to know how to do? Is that what I hear you saying? Yeah. And is there an answer to this?
Invest in the onboarding and taking for granted, like many of the companies represented here, that probably you need to assume that the training on the job and the capability to be shadowing what you are doing, or the shadow IT, being like a mirror of those activities, is an investment in order to guarantee that you have senior employees, probably accelerated, not requiring 5 years, but in 2 years you can gain the skills that otherwise would be impossible to be replicable or be found in the market, no? But this is happening in consultancy services, it's happening in industrial activities, it's happening in production line. How to preserve the gap with investment and with the assumption that you can find that outside. You need to invest inside and create another pattern, maintaining that efficiency.
But also you need to figure out another connect point, and this is the conversion of change, is new ways of working. So that will bring people back, because the reality is you will need to be taught something very different. So how do you really adjust the new ways of working? What does it make sense to be able to teach the newcomers coming in if you're not able to, that is not available anymore, the more manual things that you're kind of learning? What does that really mean? Mm-hmm. So even the way that you look at your workforce, not only how do you recruit and for what type of skill sets and leadership, but how do you onboard them, and where does the office and where does that partnership and where is that guidance really make sense to be able to fill those gaps?
Yeah, I would maybe add one last thing, which is a conversation we're having internally is, what does the shape of the organization look like today, and what will it look like in 3, 5, 10 years? And what I mean by shape is the pyramid, where your entry level makes up a significant portion, shifting to your diamond shape, where you've got the expertise and the greater amount of your employee base is now more senior, because there is this augmentation of work at the bottom. And how do you bridge that? But then, to your point, how do you then make sure that you still have a pipeline? And so that's the conversation we're having right now in our workforce strategy plan. Is that shift happening? If so, what are the trades you're making? Because if you don't shift, you're making trades. And if you do, you're making trades. So make sure you know what are those, and are they appropriate for who you are becoming as a company? And that's the conversation. Again, I don't have an answer. This is like moment in time that we're sorting through this.
It depends on the size and the role you play in the industry. To be a first mover could make a signal that could generate traction across the entire business or entire region. No? So you need to be conscious about, are we confident enough? Are we solid enough that this is gonna be? We were saying yesterday, no, the Klarna movement and the Klarna second movement. Are we gonna fail in that statement? Because this is a major policy that will resonate across all the region. If we take this decision and we change the org chart in a structural way, That's going to modify the rules of the way we interact with our partners, our clients.
Correct.
I think that calls attention to one other thing too. That one of the things we learn as leaders is that there are certain ways things work and certain ways they don't. That allows us to make some decisions quickly. And what I hear you saying now is the things we've learned as leaders, the assumptions on what the right way to do it, we really need to rethink those at every step of the way too.
Yeah.
So, Monica, I want to ask you, just turn the dial just a little bit. We've all of you have driven really big changes. But they're risky, they're scary, they're expensive, they're certainly not certain they're going to happen. So when you're going to go in and you're going to say, okay, we have a lot of paper and 8-point font and we're going to make it different, how do you get people to believe you and how do you get people to invest and go along on this?
Yeah. So nothing beats points on the board is what I like to say. If you're going to show up and say we should do this body of work, but you haven't proven that it can be done or you don't have a set of capabilities in your organization that can deliver, then nobody's going to follow you. I think, so that's one, you have to have credibility. I think the other piece is, what is the outcome we're driving? And I always approach it as we're driving this together, and I'll make it real. In 2023, we set out to do a pretty big transformation in my own IT operation, and what we talked about is the business of IT. And how do you, celebrate how we got here, because we made a lot of great progress, but we see where the puck is going, and we want to be ready to achieve outcomes only possible if we're able to have these capabilities, architecture, discipline, engineering, et cetera, et cetera. And so that transformation could have been an IT thing. Let's just do it in our own function. But the reality is it's not possible to transform without the ecosystem actually going on that journey with you. So we had to take a step back and say, well, why do we need to operate differently? And we started with business outcomes. So we said, okay, well, part of why we want to transform is because we want to be a more efficient and effective IT shop. We want to put our capital to work. We want to reduce business interruption. Why? So we can be there for our customers at their time of need. And so we set these big OKR-oriented outcomes as our endpoint, and that enabled us to therefore proceed to that transformation with a cross-functional alignment, not just, oh, IT's doing this thing. Why do you care about that? Because in my organization, we have many thousands of assets. We're a 100-plus-year-old company. And if I'm going to propose that we retire these set of applications or we change a service level agreement on these applications, I want my business partners to be aligned and to understand why and what the outcome is. So that's one. Also, when you're doing this kind of transformation, the way that things work will be different, and you need everyone to come along on that journey. So, credibility, outcomes. I'm standing here today, and I can proudly say that our teams, again, cross-functional, have achieved 25% reduction in business interruption. We've improved engineering velocity by 10%. We've reduced IT costs by 10%. We've managed our risk exposure in a different way, and we've delivered over $1 billion worth of capabilities back to the business. So all of that is endpoint, working backwards to what do you need to put in place in order to make that real. And I always say that you've got to have points on the board in order to even start the conversation, and you also need to orient it to the why, the outcome you're trying to drive, not just output. I'm turning on a new system. That doesn't work, in my experience.
So I know other people have comments, but what I did not ever hear you say is, well, here's the ROI, so let's do it.
Yeah.
So is that just table stakes, or is that more of it?
No, I think that's table stakes, right?
Okay.
And also, think about it this way. There's different types of transformation. And you have to know, will this transformation have a direct ROI? And if so, then what is changing in the business? How do you connect that to the top line, bottom line of the company? So absolutely, that's table stakes. But that can't, sometimes it's just too big. In technology, we enable a lot of different things. And how do you connect with big bodies of transfer? How do you actually connect it and thread it and say, by the dot, 50 cents that was due to this, right? It becomes nebulous, and I think people can hide behind that and say, of course, we delivered value. And so, yes, the ROI is table stakes, but then you've got to work backwards to have more precise OKRs that you're actually supporting, just the nature of the work.
Thanks. And Bill, I jumped on you when I asked that question, so I think there was something you wanted to say.
No, absolutely. I mean, I will even go back to the word transformation, because it means that somehow you woke up, something happened, and you had to bring the business along. And I think we're entering this era that it will never stop. You will have to continuously transform. So the way we looked at it from a MetLife perspective, we wanted to create the ability to continuously being contemporary and fit for purpose, either to serve your customers or your other key stakeholders. And that's a very different mindset. The second thing goes back to what Monica said. For us, when I look at technology, technology is not an isolated function sitting somewhere on the back. So it is a force multiplier to the strategy. So we made it very clear that we are half of the company, my team. So the reality is there is nothing that's happening every single day, that we're now responsible to bring those capabilities to life to be able to get us where we need it to be. So think about transformation as continuously being able to kind of ensuring that you're contemporary enough, but you need to be commercial enough. So technology is part of the business, and you need commercial aspect. Leaders need to understand how do you make money. There is no need for me to be here on the technology if we don't understand why we're here. So that intense collaboration, that end-to-end understanding, that clarity that we are here to become a force multiplier to the strategy that MetLife has is very, very important. The second thing is we have a responsibility to make sure that we guide the company in those areas that it is impact over activity. So how do we being able to prioritize effectively to be able to see the impact? And the impact needs to be clearly articulated and understood. Is it customer impact? Is it dollars impact? We took out $1 billion over the last 3 years. So that is dollars impact. But we also look at the way we service our customers, and we completely transform the way that experience has been there. So commerciality is really, really huge. Prioritization for impact versus activity. And the last piece is what you just talked about. Nothing beats the execution. At the end of the day, whatever you sit within the organization, and I don't think it's unique to technology and operations and data, you need to be able to execute, but also execute with discipline and speed, and do it at a scale that we have never done before. Because the pace of what's happening, isolated hobbies, well, they may be okay in an isolation, it doesn't really work. So prioritize for impact, but also being able to flawlessly execute and being able to deliver what you can say you deliver, it's significant.
It's interesting because I'm hearing both of you, your words resonate so well in my daily routine and drama. What I have a different perspective from the fact that I maintain two roles that typically are not under the same department of the same persona in my case, no? Innovation and Chief Information Officer, two schizophrenic roles sometimes, no? Because we are this expansive by nature, the other could be defensive, talking about cybersecurity also under my responsibility. And to frame innovation in practical terms, following any framework, 3 horizons, no? Where to be incremental, to be exponential, and to be transformational represent 3 layers where 3 speed had to be simultaneously working at all levels of the organization. How to extrapolate that in the current momentum of how the technology is giving us opportunity to innovate at different level, it's something that resonates more than ever as a complementary capability, no? So we need in our teams shakers, dreamers, but also doers, and people that are very attached to how to incrementally improve the daily activities. And we have been, during a lot of years, decoupling innovation and technical disruption or technical transformation like 2 different silos that were not attached to the same goal. We have a unique opportunity as leader in the technical domain to bring innovation in daily activities, but also to, at the same time, draft a common goal in a volatile environment with uncertainty of how to pave the road towards that objective, but with the conviction that if we iterate, if we take advantage of the knowledge, we're going to be able to manage simultaneously those both paths, no? And I think it's an incredible momentum, no, for the organization that are trying to convey the best of what they have, the best of their legacy, and the best of their future dreams.
Great, thank you. We have time for just one or two questions. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Right here, Mike. Just shout. You're always loud enough, Mike.
So, as someone who sold into enterprise tech for 25 years, one never thought of the insurance industry as early adopters. And yet, here are two of you on the stage, and, as leaders in CIO. John Hancock has come out very visibly about a lot of very powerful initiatives and results, just like Maria just spoken about the Hartford Group. What is it about the insurance industry today and this moment that allows organizations like yours to get on a path that's just not been historical in terms of adoption? Because it's quite surprising.
Maybe I can start, and then you can jump in there, Bill. I would say the pace of change in the world. I like to say we live in a VUCA world. Do we all know what that means? It's a world that just is ambiguous, it's complex, it keeps changing, right? And it's hard to keep track of. And we are in the world of managing and helping people navigate risk. And the pace of risk is going up. So we cannot afford to just stay and keep doing the same thing we've always been doing, because the risk landscape is evolving so fast. And you look at it from both our commercial side of our business to the personal side of our business, and we operate in 29 countries. So we have to, if we want to live our mission and our purpose, which is to be there for our customers at their time of need, then we have to be ahead, because we have to anticipate what could happen and how could we be there for them and how could we use new technology. California wildfires, people were calling and we were using aerial imagery to see if their house, unfortunately, had been touched. And if so, we were able to now give them payment so that they can get back on their feet faster than we would have been able to just dispatch a human and go person by person by person. So using technology to meet the changing risks and be able to support our customers, that's what's driving us. But we also have a history of being innovative. So maybe the insurance industry's gotten a bad reputation for no good reason about innovation.
What do you think, Bill?
I think goes back to your last comment. We've been around for 157 years, so we've done something right. But your point, though, because I grew up in banking, I spent 22 years with Bank of America. So when I decided to join MetLife, I had a discussion with the then newly appointed CEO, and what he said, I wanted to think about a strategy that we put the customer at the center of everything that we do. And it sounds very simple, especially if you came from a banking area, because that was always the motto. But that's very, very different from an insurance perspective with the level of intensity that we're just talking about it. And then pandemic happened, and to be honest with you, the customer really pushed to take out the imaginary insurance boundary versus the rest of the financial services. So think about it. Just because you're talking to me as an insurance, I don't think that you do not want to be treated the way that you want to be treated and the way that you were treated best last. If you talk to me, you're not saying it's okay for you to lose my information. So cybersecurity is the same thing. So I think the last 5 years, the customers got a very different view and very different expectations for all those across financial services, which for us, you took a step back and said we had tremendous amount of core capabilities and core modes that we had built, but now you need to become a lot more customer intense in terms of how you're doing that, and you need to be able to do it in a way with the same skill sets that anybody else using to be able to service it. So customers really drove a lot of that as well.
Thank you. I wish we had another hour or two. I want to thank you all for sharing your stories. I want to thank you all for being part of our symposium here. And I'd like everybody, can you just give a round of applause to these three incredible leaders?